The Pedal Power Association says most cyclists have been yelled at or ill-treated by a motorist at some point. Now, in a bid to try and make the road experience enjoyable and safer for all cyclists, the association has put together some tips. And to tell us more about these tips, we are joined via Zoom by the chairman, Gordon Laing. Mr. Laing, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Sampewe.
Let's start with how cycling and cyclists have been affected by the second wave of this pandemic.
Well, we were able to hold one or two events as we came out of the first wave. Now all events have been suspended, so we can't hold events for sport cyclists. Ordinary cycling can carry on because the curfew is from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night and anybody can ride, and there are a lot of commuter cyclists out there as well. I think what has happened is, as we went into the first lockdown, a number of people saw cycling as an opportunity to exercise. So the number of cyclists on the road has grown significantly during the pandemic. And this has put pressure on all sorts of people, from people that haven't ridden before, and also people that are out there riding with a lot of people around. And really what we would like to do is have everybody treating cyclists and cyclists treating everybody else with respect and recognizing that cyclists are vulnerable. A car is a big piece of machinery, and a cyclist sitting on a bike is quite vulnerable if knocked by a car, and it's often unintentional. But there are some cyclists out there that claim the road and really just make it difficult for all of us as responsible cyclists to live and ride comfortably on the roads with motorists and respect each other.
Okay. So what are some of the measures that you've put in place to protect cyclists against this virus, especially now that you are under level 3 of the national lockdown?
Okay, well, level 3, we're allowed to cycle. We're not allowed to cycle in groups. Obviously, There are no sports events taking place at the moment.
Yes.
So from Cycling South Africa has done a lot of work with the government on this and put out a set of advisories which we as PPA support and comply with. And I think the critical things are that cyclists can continue training, but also commuter cyclists can be out there riding to and from work or to whatever they want to do. The cycling is restricted, as with everything, to the non-curfew hours. We may not ride during curfew unless you have a permit and are cycling to or from work. Masks are not required when cyclists are exercising vigorously, but are required at all other times, and we should observe all social distancing as well.
Yeah. Now, tell us about the common complaints that PPA receives on a regular basis about cyclist behavior on the roads towards fellow riders and as well as motorists.
I think the biggest complaint is cyclists that hog the road, and there are reasons for doing that. Cyclists are trying to protect themselves, but cyclists running 3 or 4 abreast on the road and forcing motorists to slow down behind them is actually against the law. It's also not respectful or courteous to every other road user. And what we're trying to do is create as I said earlier on, an environment where everybody can share the road responsibly. And it's a very small number of cyclists that do that, and it affects every other cyclist on the road, because motorists then get frustrated and classify all cyclists as being irresponsible, which is not the case. There are a lot of very, very responsible cyclists out there that are doing the right thing. Recently there was an incident on Chapman's Peak in Cape Town where one cyclist who was going too fast crashed into another cyclist, and the cyclist just rode away without checking whether the cyclist that he crashed into was injured. I've also personally experienced where mountain bikers have been riding on a pedestrian footway and sworn at some of the runners that were on the footway while there was a cycle path just right next to them. That's not the way to behave as cyclists. If you are riding where there are pedestrians, just respect the pedestrian space. They're also vulnerable, and they have a right to be where they are most of the time. Motorists get really frustrated with cyclists who hog the road and also don't observe traffic signals that indicate that we should stop. And also where cyclists pile up at an intersection where the traffic light is red and then block the way for people to go through. One of the other things that is occurring now is that some cyclists who have already stopped at a red light or a stop street get passed by cyclists coming past who then stop in front of them. That's not respectful. If there is a red traffic light, hold the position you're in, stop, wait for it to go green, and then go through. We should also, as cyclists, we should also only ride in single file. That's the law. And we should ride in cycle lanes if there are designated cycling lanes. If you are going to overtake a cyclist, let the cyclist know that you're coming past and pass on the right. If you're on the road, cycle predictably. Don't swerve and weave unexpectedly unless there's an obstacle coming up towards you that you have to go around, and then use hand signals to tell people behind you what is happening. The other thing there are two other things that we shouldn't do as cyclists. We shouldn't cycle with earphones in. That's illegal, firstly.
Yeah.
And secondly, it doesn't allow you to hear what is happening around you. And then don't cycle against traffic unless it's in a cycle lane that allows you to do that. That is also illegal, and it is dangerous. And then in an advisory we've just put out, we did mention events. If riding in a group, and we're not allowed to do that at the moment, but if riding in a group, just be sensible to what's happening in the group and ride predictably, because it's very easy to bring a whole bunch down if you do something unexpected. And then if you are stopping, if you do stop for some reason, either to take a phone call, not remembering that it is illegal to as with driving, to use a phone while riding. If you are stopping to take a selfie, wait for a friend, or take a call, move out of the cycle path so that people don't have to swerve to go around you. Sometimes people just stop in the road, and then cyclists have to then swerve into the traffic to go past. So it's just being respectful and aware of what's happening around you to allow clear lines for people to go past.
So, Gordon, in those areas where there aren't any cycling lanes, what's the protocol with regards to sharing the road with motorists?
We're allowed on the road where there are no lanes, and we should keep as far left as possible. Also, but motorists should recognize that on the left-hand side of the road, against the edge, there's often debris and gratings and things. So we do have to be a bit careful about that. But we should stay left. If we are overtaking a cyclist ahead of us, we should indicate that, and we should check that it's safe to do so before we do that. Certainly that's one of the critical things about not riding abreast on those those roads where there's a single lane or single carriageway with no cycle path. Keep as far left as possible and as far left as is safe. Ride predictably and don't swerve. And if you see something in the road, advise other cyclists behind you of that, and also use a hand signal to indicate to drivers that you may be coming off your line, which is the line that you normally ride in, to come out past something that's up ahead of you.
So obviously there's small pockets of those irresponsible cyclists, but then what do you say then to motorists who say that cyclists generally don't obey the rules of the road?
I think it's as with everything. We talk about people that run red lights in cars. There's a lot of cyclists and a lot of motorists that obey the rules and are courteous. And what we should do is we should recognize, one of the things that with cycling is if we look overseas and what's happening overseas, cycling is becoming more and more of a form of transport. And it certainly talks to the environmental issues that we're facing and dropping carbon footprints and also reducing congestion. So really we should be encouraging cyclists on the road, especially cyclists that are commuting. And to do so, we've actually got to recognize that they are vulnerable, but be courteous towards them. And respect the fact that they're actually helping us as motorists, if we are motorists, to be able to travel quicker and more comfortably as more and more cyclists come onto the road. There's always this tension between the two, but countries where cycling is working, they work together, and it really does serve cities and towns where they have become cycling towns. So it's something that we aspire to in South Africa, and it's part of the transport and urban planning approaches that are unfolding. And it really is something that we should all see and recognize as part of the way forward. And COVID has shown us that it's possible to do that.
All right, Gordon, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective about the different facet or dimension to the cycling industry in South Africa. We appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, Simpiwe. Have a good day.
You too, man. Thank you.
And be safe out there, all cyclists, and respect for all motorists.
Sure. Most definitely. Most definitely. Thanks, Gordon. That was the vice chairman of the Pedal Power Association, and he's been sharing some useful tips for cyclists when sharing the road with other riders and drivers. Your sports news starts right now.